Bella. As I walked along the beach, feeling the warm sand between my toes and the cool ocean breeze in my hair, I couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment wash over me. The beach was even more beautiful than I had imagined, with its crystal-clear waters and powdery white sand. Lennon, ever the thoughtful one, handed me an opened coconut with a straw, and I took a sip, feeling the cool liquid slide down my throat. "It tastes good," I said, smiling up at him. As I looked around, I noticed how close my parents were. They were always touching, always connected in some way. My father would hold my mother's hand, or put his arm around her shoulder, or even just rest his hand on her waist. It was a simple, affectionate gesture, but it spoke volumes about their relationship. I felt a warmth spread through my chest as I watched them. It was clear that they loved each other deeply, and that they had a strong, supportive relationship. Reflexively, my gaze drifted towards Kai, who was strolling ahead of me alongside Ralph and Hunter. My eyes roamed over his muscular build, his broad back, and tanned skin, and for a moment, I was transported back to the times we'd shared together. I remembered the way my fingers would dig into the skin of his back as he moved above me, the way I'd moan with pleasure. I recalled the way he'd hold me close, his arms wrapped tightly around me, his lips whispering sweet nothings in my ear. But as the memories flooded my mind, I quickly shook off the nostalgia, scolding myself for letting my mind wander to such intimate moments. I recalled the pain and hurt Kai had caused me, how he'd used me as a rebound after his ex-mate. The memory still stung, and I felt a surge of anger and resentment towards him. I remembered the way he'd pushed me away, the way he'd made me feel like I was nothing more than a temporary distraction. I recalled the tears I'd shed, the sleepless nights, and as I looked at Kai now, I felt a wave of bitterness wash over me. Why did I still feel this way? Why did the sight of him still evoke such strong emotions in me? I didn't know, but I did know that I needed to get over him, once and for all. As I stood on the beach, enjoying the warm sun on my skin and the cool breeze in my hair, I noticed a group of alphas from a neighboring pack eyeing me from across the way. One of them, a tall, muscular alpha with a confident stride, began to make his way towards me. I felt a flutter in my chest as he approached me. He flashed a charming smile and introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Ryder, Alpha of the Red Oak Pack," he said, his voice low and smooth. I smiled politely and introduced myself. "I'm Bella," I said. Ryder's eyes lit up with interest. "It's great to meet you." "Bella," he said, "what brings you to the beach today?" I gave him a brief, one-worded reply. "Relaxation." Ryder didn't seem deterred by my curt response. He kept talking, asking me questions about my pack and my interests. I gave him short, monosyllabic answers, trying to discourage him from continuing the conversation. But Ryder seemed oblivious to my cues. He just kept talking, trying to draw me out. That's when Kai appeared, his eyes fixed intently on Ryder. "I think Bella's made it clear she's not interested in talking," he said, his voice firm. I felt a surge of annoyance at Kai's intervention. This wasn't the first time he'd done this tonight. Every time someone tried to talk to me, Kai would appear, chasing them off with his alpha vibes. I turned to him, my eyes flashing with anger. "Kai, I can take care of myself," I said. "I don't need you to protect me." Kai's expression didn't change, but I could sense a flicker of surprise behind his eyes. "I'm just trying to help," he said. I shook my head, my anger simmering just below the surface. "I'm not your mate, Kai," I said. "I'm not your responsibility. I can talk to whoever I want, and I don't need your permission." Kai's face darkened, and for a moment I thought he might argue with me, but then he seemed to think better of it, and he nodded instead. "Fine," he said. "But just remember, Bella, I'm watching out for you whether you like it or not." I rolled my eyes, feeling a surge of frustration. "Great," I muttered. "Just what I need, a babysitter." I stood up, frustration simmering just below the surface. I needed to get away from Kai, to clear my head and calm down. I spotted the parked speedboats and made a beeline for them, hoping to rent one and make a quick escape. As I reached the dock, I quickly scanned the boats, looking for one that was available. I spotted a sleek, black speedboat and made my way towards it. I was about to start the engine when Kai hopped in beside me, a smile spreading across his face. "Hey, where do you think you're going?" he asked, his eyes crinkling at the corners. I glared at him, feeling my frustration boil over. "I'm getting away from you," I said, my voice low and even. Kai chuckled, his eyes sparkling with amusement. "You can't escape me that easily, Bella," he said, his voice low and husky. But before he could say another word, I pushed him into the water. He let out a startled yelp as he splashed into the ocean. As he tried to climb back into the boat, my brothers, Hunter and Ralph, appeared out of nowhere, holding him back and restraining him. "Let her go, Kai," Hunter said, his voice firm. Kai struggled against them, but my brothers held firm. I took advantage of the distraction to start the engine and zoom off, leaving Kai and my brothers in my wake. As I sped across the water, the wind whipping through my hair, I felt a sense of exhilaration and freedom. I was finally alone, finally able to escape the suffocating presence of Kai. I laughed out loud, feeling a sense of triumph and satisfaction. I had outsmarted Kai and I had escaped, at least for now, but my joy was short-lived. Midway through my journey, the speedboat's engine suddenly sputtered and died. I was left drifting in the middle of the ocean, the silence a stark contrast to the roar of the engine just moments before. My heart skipped a beat as I realized something was wrong. I quickly scanned the dashboard, trying to diagnose the problem, but as I looked closer, I realized that something was off. The wires had been cut, the fuel line tampered with. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the boat. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the gravity of my situation. I was alone, adrift in the ocean, with no way to call for help. Panic began to set in, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Who could have done this, and why? I forced myself to stay calm, to think clearly. I reached for the emergency beacon, but my heart sank as I realized it too was inoperable. The screen was blank, the device dead. I was completely cut off from the outside world, with no way to communicate or escape. Fear began to creep in, my breath coming in short gasps. I was alone, vulnerable, and completely at the mercy of the ocean. I thought of Kai, of how he had been watching me all day, and wondered if he could have had something to do with this. But I didn't have time to dwell on that now. I had to act fast. I quickly dropped the anchor, hoping to stabilize the boat, but the rope snapped immediately after deployment, leaving me with no choice but to abandon ship. Panic set in as I realized I was running out of options. The boat was compromised, and staying on it would only put me in greater danger. I spotted an unnamed island in the distance, its lush green forests and white sandy beaches a tantalizing prospect. Without hesitation, I jumped off the boat and swam towards the island, the cool water enveloping me like a shroud. I didn't look back, didn't dare to, as I struck out for the island, my heart pounding in my chest. The swim was grueling, the water choppy and unpredictable, but I pushed on, driven by a desperate need to escape the sabotaged boat and find safety on the island. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I reached the shore, exhausted and shaken but alive. I struggled against the quadruplets, but they held me firm. I was caught off guard by their sudden intervention, and I found myself at a disadvantage. Lennon, Xavier, Hunter, and Ralph were all strong and determined, and they were not going to let me go easily. "Let me go," I growled, my eyes blazing with frustration. I tried to shake them off, but they held tight. I was starting to get angry, and I knew I had to calm down before things escalated further. But Lennon just smiled, a cold, hard smile. "You're not going anywhere, Kai," he spat. "You've been trying to control Bella all day. It serves you right." I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I knew I had to approach this situation carefully. The quadruplets were fiercely protective of their sister, and I didn't want to antagonize them further. "Lennon, you don't understand," I said, my voice even. "I love your sister. I'm just trying to protect her." Lennon snorted. "You don't deserve her," he said, his eyes flashing with anger. "You've been using her as a rebound, Kai. We all know it." I felt a pang of guilt at Lennon's words. He was right, of course. I had never used Bella as a rebound after my breakup with my ex-mate. Whatever thing I felt for Mabel was all in the past now. I had realized my true feelings for Bella, and I was determined to make things right between us. But before I could explain myself to Lennon, Xavier stepped forward, his eyes curious. "What's going on, Kai?" he asked. "What's all the drama about?" I hesitated, unsure of how to explain. But then I had an idea. "Why don't we all sit down with your parents and talk about it?" I suggested. I think there's been a misunderstanding, and I'd like to clear the air. The quadruplets exchanged a skeptical glance, but eventually they nodded. Fine, Lennon said, but you'd better be prepared to explain yourself. We all settled down, the tension in the air palpable. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to explain myself if I wanted to clear the air. There's been a series of misunderstandings between Bella and me, I began, my eyes scanning the room. We had agreed to stay apart and not act on the mate bond, but things started to spark between us anyway. Lennon raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by spark? He asked, his tone skeptical. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal, but I knew I had to be honest if I wanted to regain Bella's trust. We got married, I said, my voice low, but then Bella changed her mind. I was under manipulation, and that I had made a series of decisions that hurt her. Xavier's eyes narrowed. What kind of manipulation? He asked, his tone sharp. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to be honest. My ex-mate, I said. She died, I said using air quotes, under my negligence, and her best friend used it to manipulate me into doing things that hurt Bella. And I only figured out recently that she ever really died. The thought was fresh in my memory, causing the veins in my head to tick like time bombs. I knew I had to control my anger. Now wasn't the time. The quadruplets exchanged a glance, their faces grim. And you're saying that you're not responsible for your own actions? Lennon asked, his tone incredulous. I shook my head, feeling a pang of guilt. No, I'm not saying that, I said. I'm saying that I was under a lot of pressure, and I made some mistakes. But I'm truly sorry for hurting Bella. I know I don't deserve her forgiveness, but I hope that someday she can find it in her heart to forgive me. Everybody fell silent. The only sound was the sound of people chatting around us. I knew I had a long way to go to regain Bella's trust, but I was willing to do whatever it took to make things right between us. Bella's father, his expression calm and measured, spoke up. Kai, I understand that there might have been a misunderstanding between you and Bella, he said, but at the end of the day, it's Bella's decision to make, not ours. I nodded, feeling a sense of respect for Bella's father. He was a fair and just alpha, and I knew he would always put his daughter's needs first. We're not going to force her hand, Kai, he continued. If Bella doesn't want to be with you, then that's her decision to make. We'll support her either way. I felt a pang of sadness at his words, but I knew he was right. I had hurt Bella, and I didn't deserve her forgiveness, but I still held out hope that someday she might be able to forgive me and give me another chance. I understand, I said, my voice sincere, and I really do. I just want her to know that I'm truly sorry for hurting her, and that I'll do whatever it takes to make things right between us. Bella's father nodded, his expression softening slightly. I'll make sure Bella knows how you feel, Kai, he said, but for now, let's just focus on giving her the space she needs. As soon as Bella's father finished speaking, her brothers, Lennon, Xavier, Hunter, and Ralph, stood up, their faces serious. Kai, we've heard enough, Lennon said, his voice firm. Now it's time for you to prove yourself. I raised an eyebrow, unsure of what they had planned. But before I could ask any questions, Xavier spoke up. We're going to give you a series of tests, he said, a mischievous glint in his eye. If you pass, we might consider you worthy of our sister. I hesitated for a moment, but then I nodded. I was willing to do whatever it took to prove myself to Bella's brothers. The first test was a series of hypothetical questions. What would you do if Bella was in danger? Hunter asked. I thought for a moment before responding. I would do everything in my power to protect her, I said. Ralph nodded, a small smile on his face. That's the right answer, he said. The questions continued, each one more challenging than the last, but I answered them all to the best of my ability, determined to pass the test. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the questioning stopped, but the tests were far from over. Now it's time for the physical challenge, Xavier said, a wicked grin spreading across his face. I raised an eyebrow, unsure of what to expect, but before I could ask any questions, Lennon spoke up. Do 150 push-ups, he said. I nodded, dropping to the ground. I started doing push-ups, my arms and chest burning as I struggled to complete the task. But I refused to give up. I kept going, my body screaming in protest until I finally finished the 150th push-up. I stood up, my chest heaving, my arms trembling with exhaustion. but I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. I passed the test. Bella's brothers nodded, their faces serious. "You've passed the tests," Lennon said. "But that doesn't mean you're off the hook. You still have to prove yourself to Bella." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I was one step closer to winning Bella back. But as I looked at her brothers, I knew that I still had a long way to go. Just as we were finishing up the tests, a figure emerged from the distance, walking towards us with a confident stride. It was Layla, and she was wearing a bright pink swimsuit that left little to the imagination. She feigned surprise as she saw us all gathered together. "Oh, wow! What a coincidence!" she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with insincerity. "I had no idea you guys were going to be here today." None of the brothers or their father said anything to Layla, out of respect for Luna Olive, who had made it clear that she didn't want any drama or tension. But I could sense the tension in the air, the unspoken animosity towards Layla. Hunter finally broke the silence, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Has anyone seen Bella?" he asked, a hint of concern in his voice. "She's been gone for a while." Layla's eyes flicked towards me, a sly smile spreading across her face. "Oh, I think I saw someone who looked like Bella at the shoreline," she said, her voice innocent. "But I'm not sure if it was really her." I narrowed my eyes, sensing that Layla was hiding something. "What was she wearing?" I asked, my voice firm. Layla shrugged, her smile growing wider. "I don't know. Probably green or blue. She was just walking along the shoreline, looking really upset. But like I said, I'm not sure if it was really Bella." I knew that Layla was lying, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why. My instincts were screaming at me that something was wrong. Layla's story didn't add up, and I could sense that she was hiding something. I turned to Bella's brothers, my eyes locked on theirs. "Try to connect with her through the mind link," I said, my voice low and urgent. Lennon, Xavier, Hunter, and Ralph all closed their eyes, focusing on establishing a connection with their sister. But after a few moments, they all shook their heads. "We can't hear her," Lennon said, his face grim. My heart sank, and I felt a surge of fear. Something was definitely wrong. I jumped to my feet, my mind racing with possibilities. "I'm going to summon the rescue team," I said, already heading towards the dock. "We need to find Bella now." Bella's brothers and father followed close behind me, their faces set with determination. We quickly boarded a boat, and I started the engine, speeding out of the harbor and into the open sea. As we scanned the horizon, my heart was racing with fear. Where was Bella? Was she okay? I really hoped she was fine, and that we would find her soon. The thought of anything happening to her was unbearable. Bella. Exhaustion clung to me like a second skin as I finally dragged myself out of the waves and onto the island's shore. The salty air burned my lungs, each gasp sharp and ragged. My arms and legs felt heavy, weighted by fatigue, and I collapsed onto the damp sand, sprawled and shaking. For a long moment, I lay there, staring blankly at the expanse of empty sky. I made it. The words barely registered as relief, just a faint whisper in my muddled mind. Every muscle screamed, every inch of my skin stung from salt water and small cuts, but I was alive. After what felt like forever, I forced myself to sit up. I couldn't let myself stay like this. If there was one thing I knew, it was that survival didn't come to those who sat still. "We need to do something. We are stronger than this, Bella," my wolf said, and I had to agree. We were. After everything we've gone through, we are better and stronger. Nothing could tear us apart, as long as I could remember that. It was going to be hard because of how knackered I was, but I had to try. I couldn't not just do anything. Out of all the ways to die, this couldn't be one of them. At least if I died saving the world or something along those bullshit lines, it would be better. "Don't speak like that, Bells," my wolf chided, and I recoiled at the harshness. At least her presence didn't make me feel like I was going somewhat insane. Drawing on the last scraps of energy I had left, I tugged my damp clothes over my skin and set to work. A makeshift SOS signal was the first thing I managed, my fingers trembling as I arranged layers of torn clothing in the sand, anything bright enough to stand out. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. From there, survival instincts took over. I scavenged what I could from the shoreline, shellfish, and a few strands of edible seaweed. The forest loomed behind me, dark and tangled, but necessity pushed me forward. I had no choice but to press deeper. By sheer luck, I stumbled across a patch of fruit. I wasn't entirely sure what it was, but desperation overruled caution, and I filled my hands with as much as I could carry. I could possibly get food poisoning or be covered in hives if the fruits weren't good. You would see that your stupidity is very edible, too. For a wolf, you have a very bad tongue. You're meant to encourage me, not put me down. I scowled, and she might have just rolled her eyes if she could. When I finally returned to the shore, my stomach was growling loudly enough to make the wolf inside me huff with what could have been amusement. "Laugh it up seems to be your favorite hobby," I muttered, shooting her a look that she wouldn't see, but I did it anyway. I sat cross-legged in the sand. My lovely wolf, my silent, stoic companion, simply sighed, unsure of our next steps. At this rate, we would end up dead. The food wasn't half bad. In fact, it was pretty decent than some meals I'd had in days, even if it was more desperation than a fine meal. Between bites, I poked at the fire I'd managed to start, small and flickering but steady enough to keep me warm. I mused aloud, staring into the flames, if I wake up tomorrow and someone comes to rescue us, I might just fall in love with him. I turned my head, staring up at the sky, tilting it slightly. The noise she made was almost disapproving, as though scolding me for entertaining fantasies while we were still stranded on this God's forsaken island. I sighed, reaching out to scratch my ear. "You must enjoy always being wrong, Bella. If anyone's coming, it'll probably be Kai." The name sat awkwardly on my tongue, but I couldn't stop the faint flicker of hope that sparked in my chest. Kai, as I so often thought of him now, was the only one reckless enough to find me here. I wasn't sure. Would he? I shook my head. He wasn't coming. No one was. I just had to save myself, and I could get used to this life. I mean, if Tarzan could, why couldn't I? My wolf snickered at my thoughts. "Way to be positive," I said sarcastically. "Kai is coming, Bells." "Not likely," I replied softly, the hope quickly dissolving as reality returned. "But maybe." She huffed again, curling into herself with a faint growl. I envied the wolf's ability to turn off so easily. Even with exhaustion pressing down on me, my mind wouldn't stop racing. At this point, I could be a marathon runner. I should probably sleep, but that was a far-stretched fantasy because being alone in the forest knowing anything could happen wasn't a good way to fall asleep. That lullaby wasn't meant for kids, let alone me. Someone would notice soon. I prayed. They would realize I was gone and come to the rescue. I hoped. Or maybe I was just going to be trapped here for the rest of my life until a miracle happened, and then I survived. Oh, moon goddess, couldn't you just be a little kind to me? Just this once? As night crept over the island, the sounds of the waves and the crackling fire should have been soothing, but something about the stillness gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I woke up with a startle sometime later, my fire barely more than a few embers. The forest had grown darker, and a strange rustling filled the air. For a moment, I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it, a deep, shuffling sound, followed by something much heavier moving through the underbrush. The hair on the back of my neck rose. Slowly, I turned my head, my breath catching in my throat. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, focusing on the hulking figure, standing far too close. My pulse thundered in my ears as I took in the massive shoulders, the thick matted fur, and the glint of sharp teeth in the moonlight. A bear, its rancid breath hit me before I could move, a sickly mix of rot and meat that made my stomach churn. I wanted to scream, to bolt upright and run, but I couldn't. I was frozen, paralyzed by fear. This was it. The bear stepped closer, and I swore I could see its black eyes fixed on me, assessing me like prey. Then, out of nowhere, a flash of black barreled into the side of the bear. No, something more. A massive black wolf lunged at the bear, teeth sinking deep into the beast's thick neck. The sound of the struggle shattered the night, the bear's pained roar, the snarl of the wolf as it refused to let go. My frozen limbs finally responded, and I scrambled backward, pressing my back against the nearest rock. I could smell him. It was him. The fight was over almost as quickly as it started. The bear stumbled once, letting out a low, dying groan before collapsing in a heap. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it, from the blood seeping into the sand, the sheer size of the thing now lying motionless. And then my eyes darted back to the wolf, the one I knew. My heart hammered as I watched the wolf step back, its massive frame shifting, twisting, and melting in a way that sent a fresh wave of shivers down my spine. The black fur receded, replaced by smooth skin. A man stood in the wolf's place, tall, broad-shouldered, and very, very naked.
Shit! Kai!
His face was shadowed in the dim moonlight, but I'd know him anywhere. The wild hair, the sharp jaw, the eyes that glowed faintly gold as he looked at me. For a moment, neither of us said anything. My pulse was still racing, but not from fear anymore. I moved before I realized what I was doing. Rising to my feet, I stumbled toward him, my knees weak and unsteady. Kai's gaze softened as I reached him, my hands trembling as I gripped his shoulders. Without thinking, without questioning, I threw my arms around him, holding him tightly. His skin was warm beneath my hands, solid and real in a way that grounded me. The tension in my chest shattered. "You came," I whispered, my voice muffled against his shoulder. My wolf won this round. I managed to think weakly, trying to shake off my near-death experience. He came. He stiffened slightly, then let out a soft breath, his arms encircling me in return. "Of course I did," he murmured, his voice rough but steady. His scent washed over me like a protective force field, assuring me that I was okay. I held him tighter, unable to stop myself. The fear I'd felt, the absolute terror of facing that bear alone, still lingered, but it had transformed into something else entirely. A bone-deep relief, a desperate need for comfort. I pulled back just enough to look up at him. My heart stuttered in my chest as our eyes met, his golden and steady, mine probably wide and tear-filled. I couldn't remember the last time someone had saved me. Truly saved me. "You're all right now," Kai said softly, his hand brushing against my arm. "I promise." His words undid me completely. I didn't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wasn't thinking at all, but I lifted a hand to touch his face, my thumb brushing along the sharp line of his jaw. He blinked down at me, his expression unreadable. I could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong beneath my palm. I think I'm in love with him. The realization hit me so hard, it nearly knocked the air from my lungs. I didn't know when it had happened. Maybe during the long weeks of searching glances and stolen moments. Maybe when he'd shifted into a wolf to protect me, as though his life meant less than mine. Maybe it had been happening all along, in the quiet moments where I felt safest in his presence. But I knew it now. Kai frowned slightly, as though sensing the storm of emotions running through me. "Bella?" "I'm fine," I whispered, though my voice was shaking. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't press. Instead, he tugged me closer again, resting his chin on top of my head as though to shield me from everything, even myself. In his arms, I finally felt safe. In his arms, I realized I'd already fallen, completely, hopelessly, and irrevocably in love. I stood on my tiptoes and pressed my lips to his, Bella. As our lips met, the world around us melted away. Kai's mouth was warm and gentle, his lips soft as they brushed against mine. I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body, and my heart skipped a beat as I deepened the kiss. Kai's arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer as his tongue slid into my mouth. I felt a rush of excitement as our tongues danced together, the sensation sending shivers down my spine. The kiss was like a dam breaking, releasing all the pent-up emotions and desires I'd been trying to keep hidden. I felt alive, my senses heightened as I lost myself in the sensation of Kai's lips on mine. The sound of the waves and the wind faded into the background, leaving only the sound of our ragged breathing and the beating of our hearts. I missed this, the feeling of her bodies in such close proximity, the way tingles ripples through my body at his touch, the way my inner thighs shook with pleasure, coating my panties with evidence of want. His erection pressing against my stomach wasn't helping issues either. I wanted more than just the kiss. My pussy ached for more contact, so I pressed myself to him, hoping he would get it and I wouldn't have to spell it out. He pulled away from the kiss, his hand still wrapped around me, his eyes peering into mine. I could see love and admiration that made my knee buck, made my heart swell. "Bella," he said quietly, and my heart clenched. Maybe he was going to turn me down. I started to pull away, but like he could read my thoughts, he tightened his grip on my waist. "I understand if you don't want to," I was saying before he cut me off with his index finger pressed against my lips. "I want you." He spoke, the deep baritone of his voice reverberating through me. But I can't. We can't do it here. He finished, and I took a second to glance around. He wasn't wrong. There was no way he would take me in this forest, and either of us wouldn't get bruised. "Oh," I muttered, and a low chuckle eluded from him. "We could check around, though. There should be a cabin or some hut around," he said, taking my hand. As we walked in silence, my heart kept racing, and I couldn't stand it. My wolf was clawing in my mind. Kai looked at me, and the next thing I knew, I was being pinned against a tree, his lips claiming mine. It was rougher and lust-driven. His hands roamed around my body, pressing his body against mine. I bucked my hips against his, trying to cause any kind of friction as my core dripped. "Kai," I moaned as his kiss trailer from my jaw down to my neck, sucking on the place he kissed. "Do that again, Bells, and I will fuck you against this tree," he breathed, the words hot against my neck. "Fuck, Bells, you're making me lose all control." He pulled away, running his hand through his hair. I leaned heavily on the tree, trying to catch my breath. My lips were red and swollen, and the way Kai stared at them made my brain tingle. He wanted me. The thought was enough to collapse me. Luckily, after a few minutes, we finally found a cabin. It was a wooden cabin, but neither of us had the time to look around and explore as Kai pushed me against the walls, planting kisses on my neck, his hands fondling with the ropes of my swimsuit. With expertise, he untied the strings of my two-piece swimsuit, the flimsy fabric falling off me. "Kai, fuck, baby. You'll be the death of me," I said huskily. With her eyes locked on mine, she gently reached for my hard, throbbing length, stroking gently, and I slowly pushed into her, loud grunts rippling from me as I stretched her all the way through. We both moaned, our lips brushing. My breath wavered as I cupped the back of her thigh, pulling her into me. She released a harsh sigh because that movement only deepened my stroke. I pulled out of her and plunged right back in, causing her to jerk off the surface of the wooded wall. She held on to me as though her life depended on it, her palms gliding up and down my back as our bodies collided with each other. It was hard not to dwell on the sensual sync our groans and moans pulled off as my hands worshipped every perfect contour of her curves, because it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It echoed through the kitchen, sweeping us into a realm where only the pleasure we derived from our bodies mattered. My eyes greedily drank in every expression she made as I moved in and out of her. It was purely artistic, seizing every bit of my breath and tipping me over the edge. I was spellbound by her, and I didn't hesitate to take delight in how our bodies were molded perfectly, like a perfect piece of puzzle that was snapping into place. I wanted to revel in every bit of this intimate moment. The pitch of her wanton sounds heightened when my strokes deepened, striking her sensitive spot. She dragged her nails across my sweaty back, digging them into it to control the loud moans that emitted from her while I nipped at every inch of her neck, cradling her body against mine, thrusting in and out of her. She cupped the back of my head, fisting my hair when I sucked on the skin of her neck. The husky sounds I made came out muffled as my back stiffened against her. As I lifted my head off her neck to take in every pleasurable expression that mounted on her face, her lips brushed mine in a sloppy kiss. A guttural groan rippled from my chest, her legs tightening around me as our release clashed with each other. The feathery touch of our lips against each other while we reeled from the mind-shattering orgasm was amplified by our hot breath that allowed me to feel the goosebumps scattering all over her skin. The silence that passed between us wasn't in any way awkward. It only made the moment more intimate while we were buried in each other. "I love you," she whispered. Her voice was almost strained, giving away a hint of fear, but the effect those words had on me was enough to stall my breath for a second. I knew she was still very shaken from the incident with the bear. I could feel her quickened heartbeat, her rasped breath, and her nerves. For someone who just had an orgasm, she wasn't relaxed in any way. "You're safe now, Bella." I reassured her, and she nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "Thank you for coming to get me. I'd do it again in a heartbeat." I replied, and she wrapped her hands around my neck, kissing the corner of my lips. I smiled, raising a brow at her. She nudged towards the bed I hadn't noticed when we walked in. "Let's go again," she said with a mischievous smile, walking backwards to the bed, and I was more than ready to indulge her. I closed the distance between us, pulled her in by her waist, and turned her around before dropping to the bed so she would be on top of me. Strokes, moans, groans, and orgasms later, Bella fell asleep peacefully in my arms, her nerves now relaxed. Bella. I woke slowly, the world around me swimming in a haze of pain and disorientation. My eyelids felt heavy, and every breath I took was a sharp reminder that something had gone terribly wrong. The faint hum of machinery buzzed in the background, and the sterile scent of antiseptic filled my nose. As my vision cleared, I tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through my ribs, stealing the breath from my lungs. A groan escaped me, and I fell back against the pillows. "Easy," a deep voice said, steady but laced with concern. I turned my head, and there he was, my father, standing like a sentinel at my bedside. His broad shoulders were tense, and his dark eyes scanned my face as though trying to assess how badly I was hurt. "You're awake," he said, his voice softening just slightly. "What happened?" My throat felt dry and scratchy, the words barely coming out. "You were in an accident," Father explained, his jaw tightening. "The yacht, something went wrong. You were thrown when it hit the rocks." The memories came rushing back in fragments. The sound of splintering wood, the icy water swallowing me whole, the panic as I struggled to keep my head above the waves. "How bad is it?" I asked, wincing as I shifted slightly. Father hesitated, his eyes flicking to my bandaged arms and then back to my face. "The pack's healer said you'll recover, but your injuries aren't minor. You've got deep bruises, abrasions, and a cracked rib. If you're not careful, some of those bruises could leave scars." Scars. I swallowed hard, not because of the word itself, but because I could see the way it weighed on him. Father looked like he was holding himself responsible for what had happened. "Where am I?" I asked, trying to ground myself in the present. "You're in the pack infirmary," he said. His expression darkened, his protective instincts kicking in. "I've already ordered an investigation. The yacht rental operator is going to answer this. They're claiming it was a mechanical failure, but I'm filing charges for negligence." But that didn't feel right. The memory of the yacht creaking unnaturally, how all the emergency buttons were missing, it all felt too deliberate. "I don't think it was an accident," I said, my voice steadier now. Dad narrowed his eyes. "What are you saying?" "Something was off," I insisted. Dad didn't respond immediately, his jaw clenching as he processed my words. If that's true, then this wasn't just negligence. It was sabotage. I nodded, relieved that he was taking me seriously. "We need to find out who's behind this, and why." Before he could press further, a thought struck me, and dread curled in my stomach. "Where's Luna Olive?" Dad's expression softened, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. "She had a panic episode after the crash. It was bad, Bella." Ralph said, entering the room. She completely shut down. Guilt twisted in my chest. I'd returned to the pack hoping to make things better, to bring stability, but instead, my presence seemed to have worsened Olive's condition. "She's with Layla," Dad added. "Layla?" I asked, frowning. She was nearby when it happened and managed to calm Olive down. My stomach churned. Layla's sudden appearance felt too convenient, too perfectly timed. "Do you trust her?" I asked. Dad hesitated, which was the answer enough. "She's helped Olive before. I don't see why she'd harm her." That didn't ease the unease bubbling in my gut. "I want to look into it," I said firmly. "And I want the yacht operator questioned. Have the quadruplets bring him in." Dad frowned, his protective instincts flaring again. "Bella, you just woke up. You need to rest." "I can't rest until I know what's going on," I countered. He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "Fine, I'll have them handle it. But you stay here and recover. Understood?" I nodded, knowing it was the best I was going to get out of him. The tension in the infirmary lessened once the pack healer left, but it didn't dissipate entirely. The Blackwood men lingered, their presence both reassuring and slightly overwhelming. Kai had gone to retrieve food, leaving me alone with my father and his brothers. Their presence was as heavy as the storm clouds that often rolled over our lands, and while their love for me had always been evident, their approval of Kai had been lacking. Until now. Lennon sat near the window, his expression unreadable as he occasionally glanced my way. Ralph leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, his sharp eyes fixed on the floor, And then there was my father, sitting in a chair beside my bed, his brow furrowed as if deep in thought. "So," Lennon finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was gruff but tinged with something softer, concern maybe. "He stayed all night?" "Yes," I said simply, my tone measured. Ralph's lips twitched, though whether it was amusement or irritation, I couldn't tell. "Doesn't seem like his usual style." I raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly is his usual style?" Lennon stopped pacing and turned to face me, keeping his distance, keeping himself guarded. That man always had walls higher than any fortress. "Maybe he's finally learning to lower them," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. My father let out a low hum of approval, drawing both my and my brother's attention. "He's been different lately," he said, his tone thoughtful, more grounded, focused. "Focused on her, you mean," Ralph said, nodding toward me. "Is that a problem?" I asked, meeting Ralph's gaze head-on. Lennon held my stare for a moment before shrugging. "Not if it's real." "It is real," I said, my voice steady. "Kai's done nothing but prove himself to me, and to this family, whether you've noticed or not." My father's expression softened, and he nodded. "I've noticed, and I'll admit I was wrong about him. He's been stepping up in ways I didn't expect." The admission caught me off guard. "Do you mean that?" I asked, unable to hide the skepticism in my voice. "I do," he said simply. "Kai has earned my respect, and after last night, I owe him my gratitude too." His dark eyes scanned the room, taking in the Blackwood men before settling on me. He approached my bedside, setting the tray down on the small table before offering me a faint smile. "Hungry?" he asked, his voice low and warm. "Starving," I admitted, though my appetite was as much for food as it was for the comfort of his presence. As he began arranging the food, the room fell into an awkward silence. My brothers exchanged glances, and my father cleared his throat. "Kai," my father said, his tone measured. Kai straightened, his gaze meeting my father's. "Yes, Alpha?" "I wanted to thank you," Dad said, his words slow and deliberate, "for what you did last night, for keeping her safe." Kai blinked, clearly taken aback by the unexpected gratitude. "It was my duty," he said after a moment. "It was more than duty," Dad said firmly. "You could have left her in the woods. You could have waited for us to find her, but you didn't. You stayed with her, and that means something to me." Kai nodded, his expression unreadable. "I care about her," he said simply, his voice steady. "I always have." Lennon let out a low whistle, breaking the tension. "Well, I'll be damned. He finally admits it." Kai shot him a sharp look, but there was no malice in it. If anything, there was a hint of amusement in his eyes. Ralph pushed off the wall and crossed his arms. "So what's the plan then? You're just going to hover over her like a hawk for the rest of her life?" "If that's what it takes to keep her safe," Kai said without hesitation. The room went quiet again, the weight of his words settling over us like a heavy blanket. I glanced at my father, whose expression had softened even further. "You have my blessing," Father said suddenly, his voice low but firm. Kai stiffened, his eyes widening slightly. "What?" "You heard me," Dad said, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You've earned it." For a moment, Nathaniel said nothing, his surprise evident. Then he nodded, his jaw tightening. "Thank you, Alpha." Father leaned back in his chair, his gaze shifting to me. "You've chosen well," he said softly. The words warmed me in a way I hadn't expected. For so long I'd felt like I had to prove myself, to my family, to my pack, to everyone. But in this moment, I felt truly seen. Kai returned to his seat beside my bed, his hand brushing against mine as he reached for the tray. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a rush of warmth through me. As he began feeding me, I couldn't help but notice the subtle change in the room. The tension that had once hung heavy between Kai and the Blackwood men was gone, replaced by something closer to camaraderie. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like everything was finally falling into place. Later, as the day wore on, I was startled out of my thoughts by the sound of the door opening. Kai stepped inside, carrying a tray of food. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, his tone light but his eyes filled with concern. "Thank you," I murmured, meeting his gaze. His eyes softened, and he smiled. "Anything for you." For the first time since waking up, I felt a flicker of hope. "I can feed myself, Kai." I rolled my eyes when he brought the spoon to my lips. "But I want to. Let me take care of you." Sincerity made me weak in the knees. I smiled brightly. "Bella, Kai hadn't left my side since last night, and now he sat in the chair beside my bed, his head resting in his hands. The sight of him like that, a man so strong, so steady, now worn down with worry, tugged at something deep inside me. For once, the barriers he so carefully maintained were gone, and I saw him for who he truly was, someone who cared far more than he ever let on. "You should rest," I said softly, my voice breaking the silence. He looked up, his dark eyes meeting mine. "I could say the same to you," he countered, his tone light but edged with concern. I gave him a small smile. "I'm trying." Kai leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You've always been stubborn. Even after almost drowning, you still won't sit still." "I wouldn't call it stubborn," I said, tilting my head slightly. "I'd call it determined." "Whatever you want to call it, you're impossible," he said, though his lips quirked up in a faint smile. The quiet stretched between us again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. Kai's presence was a comfort, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. But even as I relaxed, a nagging thought lingered at the back of my mind, refusing to let me fully rest. It was Elaine, her email. I knew I couldn't ignore it, not if I wanted to move forward without doubts clouding my judgment. I had to confront him. "Kai," I began hesitantly, breaking the silence again. He looked at me, his brows furrowing slightly. "What is it?" I hesitated, my fingers fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. Then, taking a deep breath, I reached for my phone and pulled up the email Elaine had sent. "I need to ask you about this," I said, holding the screen out to him. Kai's expression shifted as he read the message, his jaw tightening and his eyes darkening. When he looked back at me, his gaze was steady, but there was a flicker of something else. Anger, maybe, or frustration. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with tension. "She sent it to me last week," I said. I didn't want to believe it, but I need to know the truth. Kai sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Bella, I swear to you, Elaine is lying. She's trying to come between us." I searched his face, looking for any sign of deception, but all I saw was sincerity. "She's a manipulator," he continued, his voice firm. "She's always been jealous of what we have, but I need you to believe me. I love you, and I want to be with you. Elaine is trying to put crazy ideas in your head, to ruin what we have just because she's bitter that I finally threw her out of the pack. And Mabel, she pretended to be dead for so many years and has gotten married to someone else, while leaving me here to wallow in the guilt of the negligence that caused her supposed death. I'm done with her." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I wanted to believe him, but the pain of past betrayals still lingered in my heart. Kai leaned forward, his gaze locking onto mine. "I love you, Bella. I've loved you from the moment I saw you, and I will keep loving you for the rest of my life, no matter what Elaine or anyone else tries to do." His confession hit me like a tidal wave, washing away the doubts and fears that had taken root in my mind. "I believe you," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. Relief flooded Kai's face, and he reached out to take my hand in his. His touch was warm and steady, grounding me once again. "Thank you," he said softly, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Whatever challenges we faced, I knew we could face them together. Later that evening, Lennon appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "We've brought in the yacht operator," he said without preamble. I sat up straighter, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at my injured ribs. "Where is he?" "Downstairs," Lennon said. "He's a wolf from a pack allied with the Blackwoods." I nodded, steeling myself. "Take me to him." "Absolutely not," Kai said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Kai, you're not leaving this bed," he said firmly, his gaze daring me to argue. "You're still recovering, Bella. You're not putting yourself through more stress." I opened my mouth to protest, but the determined look on his face stopped me. Reluctantly, I sank back against the pillows. "Fine," I muttered. "But I want him brought here. I need to see him." The room was still, save for the faint hum of the monitors and the rustling of paper in Lennon's hands. When he returned with the yacht operator, my heart rate quickened, though I fought to keep my expression neutral. The man was older, perhaps in his late 40s, with a deeply lined face and the faintest limp in his step. His hair was graying at the temples, and his posture, though upright, carried an edge of nervous energy. Ryan escorted him inside, his grip firm on the man's arm, as if ensuring he wouldn't bolt. The operator's eyes darted around the infirmary before landing on me. He froze, his face paling slightly as though my injuries made his guilt tangible. "Sit," Lennon commanded, gesturing to the chair placed a few feet from my bed. The man hesitated for a fraction of a second before sinking into the seat. I studied him, taking in every detail, the beads of sweat forming on his brow, the way his hands trembled slightly as they gripped his knees. He didn't seem like the mastermind behind a sabotage, but appearances could be deceiving. "What's your name?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Philip," he said, his voice shaky. "Philip Andrews." "Philip," I said evenly, "do you know why you're here?" He nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. I already told the Alpha everything I know," he stammered. "The yacht malfunctioned. I don't know what else to say." I leaned forward slightly, ignoring the sharp twinge in my ribs. "That's not good enough," I said, my tone sharp enough to make him flinch. "People could have died, Philip. I could have died. So, forgive me if I don't take 'I don't know' as an answer." His eyes widened, and he shook his head vehemently. "I swear it wasn't my fault. I checked the yacht before we set off. It was in perfect condition." "Then how do you explain what happened?" I pressed, narrowing my eyes. Philip's hands fidgeted in his lap, his gaze darting to Lennon as if looking for an ally. When he found none, he sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "The engine just gave out. It was like nothing I've ever seen before." I studied him for a moment. I knew he spoke the truth. "Philip," I said softly, though my tone carried an edge, "if someone tampered with the yacht, would you know?" He hesitated, his eyes flicking to the door as though considering escape. "I might," he said finally, "but I don't think anyone did. At least, not anyone on my crew." I exchanged a glance with Kai, who had been standing silently at my side, his arms crossed. He gave me a slight nod, his expression unreadable. "Let me make this clear," I said, turning my attention back to Philip. "If I find out you're hiding something, anything, I will make sure you regret it. Do you understand?" Philip nodded quickly, his face pale. "Yes, ma'am." There was no malice, no hint of sabotage. Philip was as blindsided as the rest of us. I pulled back, the strain leaving me dizzy. My head throbbed and I swayed slightly, the room spinning around me. "Bella!" Kai was at my side in an instant, his hand steadying me. "That's enough. You're pushing yourself too hard." "I'm fine," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. "No, you're not," Kai said firmly. He turned to Lennon. "Get him out of here. He's useless." "Wait," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Philip, think carefully. Was there anyone at all, who could have had access to the yacht before we boarded?" Philip hesitated, his brow furrowing. No one I can think of," he said slowly. As Philip was escorted out, I sank back against the pillows, exhaustion pulling at me like a heavy weight. Kai's hand found mine, his touch grounding me. "You shouldn't have pushed yourself like that," he said, his voice low but filled with concern. "I had to," I said, meeting his gaze. "If someone sabotaged that yacht, they won't stop until they finish the job." Kai's jaw tightened and he nodded. "Then we'll stop them first." Despite my wariness, his words filled me with a renewed sense of determination. Whoever was behind this wouldn't get away with it. Not if I had anything to say about it. The warmth of his hand on mine sent a wave of comfort through me, but it also brought with it a rush of memories. Of our night together on the island, the passion we'd shared. My cheeks flushed at the thought, and I quickly looked away, embarrassed by the direction my mind had taken. Kai smirked slightly, as if he could read my thoughts, but he said nothing. As exhaustion pulled at me, I let my eyes drift shut, Kai's steady presence the last thing I felt before sleep claimed me. K.I. The subtle rise and fall of her chest told me she was still fast asleep, her little snores being overshadowed by the beeping sound of the hospital equipment. I gently lifted her head, rearranging her pillow, letting her head softly fall back. Stray strands of hair had escaped her loose ponytail and littered her face, scrunching it up ever so lightly as the hair danced on the tip of her nose. I tucked it behind her ear, taking a moment to admire the beauty, her beauty. His breath caught in his throat as her eyes fluttered open ever so briefly, the white hospital light reflecting off the blue of them. She turned in the large bed and was fast asleep again, her chest still maintaining its rhythm. I stood up, arranging my slacks and smoothing my shirt as I lowered myself, gently pressing a kiss to her forehead, which faintly tasted of lavender, and trailing it down to the tip of her nose. I cradled her petite face in my palm a while longer, before I straightened myself and walked out of the room, needing to stretch my legs a bit. I stopped a nurse on the way out. "Please, if anything happens, I'm just outside." I pointed towards the exit and the other end of the long hallway. She briskly nodded as I walked out. "Bella is finally okay." I outwardly heaved a sigh of relief as I remembered how much of a whirlwind the last couple of days had been. After this, she's not lifting a finger for any reason. I just need her to be discharged, and fast. A faint humming sound filled the air and shook me from my thoughts. I reached into my back pocket, Bella's face briefly flashing across the screen as I put in my password. Ralph's name flashed across the screen, the vibration stopping as I slid the accept button across the screen. "Alpha wants to see you. It's very important. But I'm with Bella at the hospital." "I know. We know. We're sending someone over there now." The line clicked dead, telling me that the conversation was over. I rushed back into the hospital, alerting the nurse from before that I'd be leaving on an errand, but to keep me posted, and made my way to the Blackwood family mansion. My tires slowed to a stop as the automatic gate rolled open, the security obviously expecting me. I slowly drove in and parked. The evening sun stretched lazily across the horizon, some parts of the golden streaks blocked by the huge buildings in the Blackwood estate. Stone fountains and shaped hedges littered the grounds, giving the estate a more medieval vibe. I strolled towards the main building, my palms clenched in my pockets as I slightly shivered. I pushed the door open and made my way in. The soles of my leather loafers clicked against the pristine marble, the echo they produced fading into oblivion as it went deeper and deeper into the corridor. The door shut behind me, nearly plunging the passage into total darkness. A painting of Bella and her brothers hung menacingly on the huge wall opposite me. Her soft blue eyes stared into my soul as the eyes of her brothers surrounded her. Lennon lay at her feet, his hazel-colored eyes staring directly at me, a stark contrast to the lopsided grin on his face, as his head rested on her lap, her hand in his shaggy brown hair. He had the same dimple she had on her left cheek. Xavier stood by the right, his arm on her shoulder, and a lazy smile on his face. His amber eyes were locked lovingly on his sister as their identical bow-shaped lips turned up in big smiles. Hunter sat on the arm of the chair, a thoughtful look on his face as he stared at the camera, seemingly staring into the soul of whoever was looking at the photo. I'd seen the little scrunch on his face plenty times before. Light shone in his deep brown eyes. Ralph stood at the left, his arm on the backrest of the chair, his lips barely turned up into a smile. Finally, Luther. He stood menacingly behind the chair, his jaw set and his eyes hardened. His rough, jet-black hair was a sharp contrast to the pair of blue eyes he shared with his sister. This was the Blackwood. "Alpha, Luther, and my brothers are waiting," Lennon said lazily, crossing his feet as he leaned into the doorframe, picking at his nails. "This way," he said, gesturing as he started walking, not bothering to see if I had followed. The gentle click of my soles and sounds of our breathing were the only sounds to be heard as he ushered me up a small staircase, a door at the other side of the landing. We opened the door, and there they sat, the males of the Blackwood Pack. My palms were slightly sweaty, and a sheen of sweat lightly coated my forehead. Facing my girlfriend's brothers is more scary than anything I will ever have to face. Alpha Luther cleared his throat, urging me to take a seat opposite him, the round table setting throwing me off even more. "So what exactly are your intentions with my sister, other than putting her in harm's way?" Ralph started, staring me down. "I really love her. I plan to propose to her soon," I started, seeing Xavier and Hunter nod slightly. Webb, though, this wasn't the first time I was having to explain my intention with Bella. "Oh, yes, we talk about the future a lot." I trailed off, smiling as I remembered her. "Focus, Kai. She's even mentioned you all quite a few times. She happened to tell me you're into medicine. We've been looking for a new executive director of patient services, and from what I hear, you have amazing people skills." Director of patient what? You'll basically handle our public relations. You'll oversee staff, nursing, security, and the doctors themselves. You'll make sure our patients' care is of the best quality and ensure all procedures and treatments are to the best of the doctor's abilities. You'll also be a sort of liaison between staff, the board, and the patients, addressing any concerns any of them may have legally or otherwise. Wow. I know, it's not an easy job, but I've seen the way you are with your sister, at least a few times. You're up to the task. All right, I'll think about it. Here's my contact info. If you can't reach me directly, ask for my assistant. She'll help you get in touch with me. I finished, watching Ralph fight a smile. One down. How's Bella anyway? A voice drawled from the liquor cabinet behind me. I turned my neck slightly, watching Hunter pour himself a glass of wine. She's a lot better now. Before I left, she was asleep and the doctors told me she's almost fully recovered. That's great to hear, all things considered, he said, plopping on the armchair as he sipped from the wine. The atmosphere was getting less tense, so I struck up another conversation. I noticed the art on the walls. Are they originals, or you purchased them from museums? Lennon stood up, putting his arms on Hunter's shoulders as he answered. They're all originals, done by our very own Wolf Picasso. Between you and I, he's a bit of a diva when it comes to his art, Lennon whispered loudly, laughing as Hunter smiled and shrugged him away. What do you know about art? Hunter asked, his interest obviously piqued as he set the crystal glass delicately on the table, crossing his legs. Not much, if I'm being honest. I'm more of a sports guy myself, but my assistant and best friend have been raving about this piece me and Bella got a few weeks ago. He scoffed, smirking as he took a sip from the wine again. By, Red, no, that wasn't it. Renee something. Renee Snow? He asked, his lazy eyes wide open now. Wow, you got good taste. I just bought it because it looked pretty. I don't even know where to hang it or if I'll hang it at all. I don't really understand the painting. Oh, that's quite a shame. I couldn't attend her latest gallery showing because I was under the weather a bit. Oh, that's okay. It's yours if you want it, bro. Do not fuck with me, Kai, he said excitedly. I'm not. I could bring it over when Bella's recovered. Thank you, dude. That's really nice of you, actually, he said, a boyish smile taking over his face. Enough of art, Lennon started, laughing as Hunter flipped him off. So what do you have for me? Lennon, Hunter chided, laughing as his brother plopped on the floor in front of him, resting his head on Hunter's knees. What are you into? War. I choked on the water which the maid had offered me. They all burst into laughter, a subtle red creeping up my cheeks. I'm kidding, geez. I don't really do anything except train the cubs and some of my friends every once in a while. Oh, that's nice. We could spar some time, I guess, I said, offering him a small smile. Just so you know, I won't go easy on you just 'cause you're my sister's boyfriend. I wouldn't expect anything less. Hey, I could help you train them if you like. What? How? Not physically. I'm horrible at teaching or doing things with people. I could, I don't know, give you guys some new sparring equipment, even fund some of the training. After all, Bella needs a whole army to protect her, right? True that. It's their fault she's so dainty. They wouldn't even let me give her a simple headlock, he said, throwing up his hands in exasperation. Don't worry, I'm training her. Maybe she'll give you a headlock instead. You wish, he said, standing up and dramatically flexing his muscles. We all burst out laughing, the tense atmosphere completely dissipated. What about if they get injured? Xavier started. Come again. My best friend lost his parents in a clash a few years ago and were too poor to afford the hospital's enormous bills. So what if more wolves die? Everyone went quiet. I guess I could expand the hospital's incentives for less privileged wolves. Wow, I've never actually thought about that before. Thank you, Xavier. But of course, that's an issue you'll discuss with the soon-to-be executive director of patient services, I said, pointing at Ralph. I didn't accept the job yet. Just accept it, you diva, Lennon shouted, throwing one of his shoes at him. Exactly. We all know you will, Hunter said, laughing. All right, fine. You're all looking at the new executive director of patient services at Markley Med. Everyone started laughing in celebration. Alpha Luther gestured to me while they were celebrating. urging us to go to a quiet corner and talk. We left the room, our heels clicking against the asphalt as we walked into the balcony attached to the room. Very smart of you, Kai. Winning over each of my brothers, you're a smart man, I nodded. But I don't need any of that. My main question is this: is my sister safe with you? Not just for now, but in the future. We almost lost her, and I assure you, the next time she's put in danger like this. She really loves you, you know. I haven't seen her this happy in a while. Don't let her love be the thing that kills her. If does or comes to grave harm, I will have your head. This is a promise. I swear to you on the moon goddess, I love Bella, and I will do my very best to protect her for as long as I live. That's all I needed to know, thank you, he finished, walking back into the room as if he had never left. I nodded, walking into the room behind him as he turned, offering me the smallest of smiles, Bella. My body was healed. No more bruises, no more gashes, but the scars on my pride and the questions swirling in my mind remained. The yacht sabotage wasn't an accident. Someone had tried to kill me, and every instinct screamed one name: Layla. I knew she had something to do with it. She always hated me, and every single time we met, she managed to prove that. The conviction drummed in my heart. She had to be the one. But if she was, how could she manage it on her own? She was the only one that had something to gain the most from my death, so her motives weren't a problem. It was how. Her smugness, her hostility, her constant presence near Luna Olive, it all pointed to her involvement. Today, I would get the answers I needed, no matter what. The hotel where my mother was staying stood like a gleaming fortress, its pristine marble walls and gold accents reflecting the morning light. I entered the lobby, my boots clicking softly against the polished floors, ignoring the curious glances from staff. The moment I stepped into the private lounge, my eyes found her. Stella sat beside Luna Olive, her body draped in expensive fabric, every inch of her exuding elegance and superiority. My mother, by contrast, looked fragile, her pale hands resting in her lap and her face drawn with fatigue. "Bella," my mother said, her voice soft but pleased, "you're here." I knelt in front of her immediately, guilt clawing at my chest. "Mother," I said gently, taking her hand. "How are you feeling?" She smiled faintly. "A little tired, but I'm all right. Layla's been so kind to stay by my side." I sneered. Kind? If kind was spelt manipulative, then yeah, sure. She was a serpent waiting to strike any time soon. I narrowed my eyes on her. "Kindness has nothing to do with it," Layla interjected, her voice sharp. "Someone had to step up. God knows it wasn't going to be you." I straightened and turned to face her. "I'm here now. She's my mother, my birth mother, so I'll always be here for her, so thank you for your kindness." Sarcasm dripped into the last words. Layla scoffed. "How noble of you. The prodigal daughter returns, once again too late. Do you even realize how sick she's been, Bella? Or are you too busy running around playing alpha to notice?" She glowered at me. "Caring for people isn't a duty but free will. But how would you know that when you are too self-absorbed?" "And you know all about that?" I scoffed. My jaw tightened, but I refused to rise to her bait. "I've had responsibilities," I said, keeping my tone measured. "But that doesn't mean I don't care." "Responsibilities?" Layla repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, of course. Your precious duties, so important that you can't be bothered to look after the woman who gave you life. But I guess that's just who you are. Ungrateful. You're just a country she-wolf that doesn't understand respect or manners. How dare she? She took everything that belonged to me for years. Things I deserved, snatched away, and I took her side of the platter, and she dared say such things? Positions reversed. The insult was meant for her. Shame wasn't inherent, I suppose. I stepped closer, my voice firm. "This is my mother we're talking about, Layla. Don't pretend you care more than I do. Everyone knows the kind of person you are underneath all the glamour." I could use a lot of adjectives, but the best would be a hypocrite. That was what she was. I wondered why she wasn't a fucking snake instead of a wolf. She was tarnishing our species. Layla was a stain to our community. Pretend? Layla laughed coldly, rising to her feet. "I've been here every day, sitting by her side, making sure she eats, helping her rest. Meanwhile, you're off gallivanting with rogues and endangering your life. You don't deserve to call yourself her daughter." "That's enough," I said, my patience wearing thin. "I appreciate your help, but you don't get to judge me." Don't I? Layla shot back, stepping closer. You're neglectful, Bella, selfish, and let's not forget the unfilial. Do you even see Luna Olive as your mother, or is she just another obligation to you? Another responsibility you can barely handle? Her words hit harder than I expected, stirring a deep, old wound I thought I'd buried. I've done everything I can to protect this family, I said, my voice low but steady. Protect? Layla sneered. You can't even protect yourself? That speedboat accident? A disaster waiting to happen. Honestly, you're lucky to be alive, not that you deserve it. The room seemed to tilt for a moment as her words settled over me like a heavy fog. What did you just say? Layla's confidence faltered for the briefest moment, but she quickly recovered. You heard me. You're reckless and irresponsible. It's only a matter of time before your incompetence catches up with you. You said speedboat accident? I pressed, taking a step closer. Layla's eyes flickered with something close to panic before she masked it with disdain. Everyone knows about it, Bella. The whole pack's been talking. No, I said, shaking my head. I didn't tell anyone. And yet, here you are, throwing it in my face, almost like you were expecting it to happen. She opened her mouth to retort, but quickly shut it, her jaw tightening. You're delusional, she hissed. Always looking for someone to blame. It's pathetic. I'm glad you survived, though. A shame to lose you to such careless oversight. You leaked my arrival time, I said, my voice sharpening. You told someone when I'd be at the docks, didn't you? She was lying. The fake care of my survival was a mockery. My abilities had never failed me before. You have no proof, she snapped, her voice rising. I don't need proof, I shot back. I can feel your lies. You might fool everyone else with your sweet words and fake concern, but you don't fool me. Layla's composure cracked, her lips pulling into a snarl. Even if I did know something, she spat, what would you do about it? Run crying to Alpha Luther? You're nothing, Bella. A little girl playing at being strong. Her words sent a wave of anger coursing through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. You can keep lying, Layla, but the truth always comes out, and when it does, I'll make sure you pay for what you've done. She let out a bitter laugh. You think you're so righteous, don't you? Like you're the only one who cares about this family. You're wrong, Bella. You don't know the first thing about loyalty. This isn't about loyalty, I said quietly. It's about the fact that someone tried to kill me, and you were involved. For a moment her mask slipped, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or guilt. But then she straightened, her expression hardening once more. Prove it, she said, her voice cold. I will, I said, stepping back. And when I do, you'll regret ever underestimating me. She took a step towards me, her voice dropping low, barely audible. If I wanted you dead, Bella, I would finish the job. I halted when I heard her evil words. Good to know that apart from lying, commitment to killing is one of your short list of skills. I mimicked the volume of her voice, eyeing her before finally walking out, but not before flashing my mother a tight-lipped smile. She didn't even bother to intervene as we spoke. It was lost on me. As I reached the lobby, I paused to steady my breathing, the weight of the confrontation settling heavily on my shoulders. Just as I was about to leave, a familiar voice stopped me. Bella, wait. I turned to see Luna Olive approaching, her steps slow but purposeful. Her pale face was lined with worry, her hands clasped in front of her. I wondered if she was here to scold me. With her, I could never know. Layla had sunk her teeth so deep into her that she would believe anything the girl said. A bitter smile almost made its way to my lips at the thought. Are you all right? She asked, her voice soft but insistent. I'm fine, I said quickly, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. The near-death experience still unnerved me. Most especially, who did it? I couldn't believe someone tried to kill me. Thanks to Kai, I was found, but what if he had shown up late? What then? My eyes flashed with coldness for a second before it landed back on my mother's face. She reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Don't lie to me, she said gently. Something's wrong, I can feel it. Her concern, so unexpected and genuine, made my throat tighten. For a moment I didn't know what to say. Feel it? Didn't she feel all the pain Layla inflicted on me? The pain that she indirectly caused because of her neglect? I'm just tired, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I was, truly. Things were too much for me. She studied me for a long moment before sighing. "I wish you wouldn't carry so much on your own," she said. "You don't have to bear everything alone, Bella." Her words struck something deep inside me, but I forced a small smile. "I'll be fine. You should rest, Mother." She gave me a faint smile in return. "Just promise me you'll be careful." "I promise," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. With that, she stepped back, letting me leave. The truth was closer than ever, but it came with a price. As I stepped into the cool morning air, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Kai's room was dimly lit, the heavy curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. I paced the floor as I recounted my confrontation with Layla to him, the adrenaline from the exchange still coursing through me. My hands clenched and unclenched at my sides as I replayed every word, every insult she had thrown at me, and her subtle slip about the speedboat. She was behind it or had something to do with it, I was sure. Kai listened intently, his sharp amber eyes following my movements. His presence was steady and grounding, even as the storm inside me raged. When I finally finished, he leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed in thought. "She knew too much," I said, my voice tight. "There's no other explanation. Layla was involved, but how? How could she have tampered with the speedboat? Evil people could always achieve anything, especially someone like Layla." Kai steepled his fingers, his expression grave. "She couldn't have done it alone. Sabotaging something as complex as a sipped boat, especially one you're so protective of, would require resources, or magic." I froze, his words sinking in. Magic? That wasn't possible. Layla was a witch, but not the magical one, because if she were, then Goddess help us all. He nodded. "Think about it. You said the speedboat was fine when you left the dock. The sabotage had to have been subtle, something that didn't leave a trace but still ensured your death. Mechanical failure doesn't fit the timing or the precision of the attack." A chill ran down my spine. "You think a witch is involved? Oh Goddess, what the fuck did Layla do? Plotting with witches? Now that was truly low, even for her." "It's a possibility," Kai said. "We've seen it before. Mabel used a witch's potion to mask her scent and escape. Witches have spells for nearly everything. Poison, misfortune, even death. If Layla aligned herself with one, it wouldn't be hard to arrange." The idea of witches meddling in my life made my stomach churn. They were dangerous, unpredictable, and notoriously difficult to track. If Layla had enlisted one's help, proving it would be nearly impossible. The girl was sick and twisted. She understood what witches were to us, and she would do that for what? To get rid of me for power? Power that was never hers in the first place. My teeth clenched. "She's good at playing the victim," I said bitterly. "Every time I get close to exposing her, she twists the situation and gains more sympathy. My mother, Luna Olive, trusts her completely. Why can't someone as powerful and smart as Olive see Layla for who she truly was? She was so blinded by something that Layla's grip on her grew stronger every day. That was dangerous. My mother could very well be in danger if Layla saw her as a threat. Oh dear me." Kai's jaw tightened. "Luna Olive's judgment is clouded. She's unwell and doesn't see Layla for what she truly is. But Alpha Luther is another matter. He won't let this slide if you present what you've found. My father would surely listen." "Even if I do," I said, my voice heavy, "Layla will deny everything, and without proof of her connection to a witch, she'll keep slipping through my fingers." Slipping she was good at. I sighed deeply. Kai stood, his towering frame casting a shadow over me. "Then we make sure she doesn't. We confront her, force her hand, and ensure she has no escape." His determination was infectious, and I nodded, the fire in my chest reigniting. I wrapped my arms around him, his warmth and scent a comfort to my restlessness. "What would I do without you?" I muttered into his chest. He stroked my hair, lovingly. Same question I ask myself every day. I giggled, despite the situation. The gathering was hastily arranged, the air in the Pack's council hall tense with anticipation. Alpha Luther stood at the head of the room, his commanding presence enough to silence even the rowdiest of wolves. Layla was escorted in, flanked by 2 enforcers, her face a mask of indignant outrage. "This is absurd," she said, her voice carrying a sharp edge. "I've done nothing wrong. This is harassment." "You're here because there are questions that need answers," my father said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Bella has brought serious concerns to my attention, and as Alpha, it's my duty to investigate. Layla's eyes darted to me, her expression shifting to one of hurt betrayal. "You're behind this, aren't you?" she hissed. "How dare you accuse me after everything I've done for this family? For your mother? I've never asked for payment, but shouldn't you have a minuscule of shame?" I met her gaze evenly, refusing to be swayed by her theatrics. "Your actions speak louder than your words, Layla, and your slip-ups have exposed more than you realize." "Slip-ups?" she scoffed, crossing her arms. "You're grasping at straws, Bella. You always have been. Jealous of anyone who dares get close to Luna Olive, afraid of losing the attention you barely deserve." The accusation stung, but I refused to let it show. This isn't about jealousy. It's about the truth. You leaked my arrival time, Bella. You knew exactly when and where I'd be, and you used that information to orchestrate an attempt on my life. "Lies," Layla exclaimed, her voice rising. "Do you hear this, Alpha? She's accusing me without a shred of proof. It's a witch hunt." "Enough," Alpha Luther said, his voice booming. "If Bella says you're hiding something, I believe her." Gratitude washed over me at my father's trust, and my chest puffed up, knowing I had some support. Layla's confidence faltered, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an ally. Her gaze landed on Luna Olive, who had insisted on attending despite her fragile state. "Luna," Layla said, her voice softening as tears welled in her eyes. "You know me. You know I would never do anything to harm Bella or anyone else. Please, tell them this is a mistake." Luna Olive hesitated, her gaze shifting between Layla and me. "I don't believe Layla would do such a thing," she said finally, her voice trembling. "She's been nothing but loyal to this family." "She's loyal to herself," I said, my voice firm, "and she's using your trust to cover her tracks. It's exactly because of that trust that she grows limitless in her evil tactics." Before Luna Olive could respond, Layla turned to Alpha Luther, her tears vanishing as quickly as they'd appeared. "You can't do this," she said. "You have no right to drag me through the mud like this. I demand to be released." I sneered. "Demand?" She should be on her knees, begging. "You'll be released," my father said, "once the Werewolf Court has investigated your actions. If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear." The blood drained from Layla's face. "The Werewolf Court? You're taking me there?" "You can treat me like a criminal," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Her reaction was all the confirmation I needed. She was terrified, not of being accused, but of what the court might uncover. Suddenly, she lunged for the door, her movement quick and desperate. But the quadruplets, our most formidable enforcers, blocked her path, their expressions grim. "You're not going anywhere," Xavier said, his voice like steel. My 4 brothers stood at the door, blocking her path. Before anyone could react further, the doors to the council hall burst open, and Max strode in, his presence commanding and unyielding. "Let her go," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Layla's entire demeanor shifted as she ran to him, throwing herself into his arms. "Max," she cried, "they're trying to ruin me. Please, don't let them take me away." Max's gaze swept over the room, landing on me. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "She's being investigated for her role in an attempted murder," I said evenly. He raised an eyebrow. "And you have evidence to support this claim?" "Not yet," I admitted, "but I will." Max's expression darkened. "Then you have no right to detain her. She is my chosen Luna. Have you all forgotten?" His eyes swept over all of us, expecting to see fear, but I scowled at him. "It's not up to you," my father said. "This is a pack matter, and I have the authority to decide how it's handled." Layla clung to Max, her tears flowing freely now. "They're trying to destroy me because they hate me," she sobbed. "Please, Max, don't let them do this." He looked down at her, his expression softening. "No one will harm you," he said firmly. Despite the fire of anger burning in my chest, I forced myself to remain calm. "She's manipulating you," I said, "just like she's manipulated everyone else." Max turned to me, his eyes sharp. "You've always been quick to judge, Bella, but perhaps your hatred blinds you to the truth." "Hatred has nothing to do with this," I said, "and you know it." For a long moment, the room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, Alpha Luther spoke. "Layla will remain under watch until we've completed our investigation," he said. "That's final." Max's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "If she's guilty, I'll accept the court's decision. But until then, she stays under my protection. I will drop the matter for now because of lack of evidence. And my mother's pleas. Layla glanced at me over Max's shoulder, her eyes narrowing with triumph. You'll never win, she whispered, her voice dripping with venom. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. I already have. The truth is coming, Layla. And when it does, there will be nowhere left for you to hide. I will expose your conniving with the witches and your whole facade will be ruined. You will be ruined. Her confidence wavered, but she quickly recovered, turning her attention back to Max. Together, they left the council hall with Layla walking ahead. When Max got to where I stood, his expression softened, his SD searching mine before he finally spoke. Why did you reject me? Max, I sat on the edge of my bed staring blankly at the wall as the memories flooded my mind. Bella, my Bella, the one who got away. Why didn't I take her as my mate when I had the chance? Why did I let Layla deceive me? I thought back to the day I met Bella. Her sparkling eyes, her bright smile, her infectious laugh. I was drawn to her like a magnet. But I was young, foolish, and blinded by my own ego. Layla, with her cunning words and seductive charm, had manipulated me into believing Bella wasn't the rightful heir to our family's legacy. She convinced me that Bella was inferior, that she didn't deserve to be part of my family. But the truth was far from it. Bella was the one the quadruplets loved and cherished more. They saw something in her that I didn't. Her kindness, her compassion, her strength. I remembered the way the quadruplets would gather around Bella, listening to her stories, playing with her hair. They adored her, and she loved them just the same. But I was too blind to see it. I was too caught up in Layla's web of lies. The pain of regret coursed through my veins like poison. I had to make things right. I had to find Bella and claim her as mine. But would she even want me now? I took a deep breath, determination burning within me. I would do whatever it took to win her back, to prove my love and devotion. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. For Bella, I would face any challenge, overcome any obstacle. I rose from the bed, my heart pounding with resolve. It was time to make things right, time to claim my mate. As I stepped into the house, my heart racing with anticipation, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. I had been avoiding this place for weeks, but I couldn't put it off any longer. I needed to see Layla, to pretend that everything was fine between us. But it was her who I didn't want to see that had my heart skipping a beat. Bella. As I entered the living room, I was met with a familiar sight. Stella's adoptive mother, Luna Olive, seated on the couch, her frail body racked with pain. Layla sat beside her, holding her hand and whispering softly. But then I saw her. Bella sat in the corner, her eyes fixed on the floor as she typed away on her phone. My heart skipped a beat as our eyes met, and for a moment, time stood still. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All the feelings I thought I didn't have came flooding back. I remembered the way Bella used to smile at me, the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed. I recalled the way she made me feel like I was home. As I gazed at Bella, my resolve crumbled. I wanted to reach out to her, to pull her close and never let her go. I wanted to tell her how much I still loved her, how much I regretted letting her slip away. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to keep up the charade, to pretend that I still cared for Layla. With a heavy heart, I tore my gaze away from Bella and focused on Layla. I forced a smile onto my face and walked over to her, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "How's your mom doing?" Layla looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "She's not doing great, Max, but thanks for asking." I nodded sympathetically, feeling like a traitor. I knew I was playing with fire, pretending to care for Layla when in my heart I wanted nothing more than to be with Bella. As I stood there, I couldn't help but sneak glances at Bella. She was still sitting in the corner, her eyes fixed on the floor. I wanted to go to her, to comfort her, to tell her how much I loved her. But I couldn't, not yet. I took a deep breath, trying to focus on the task at hand. I needed to keep up the charade to make Stella believe I still cared for her. "So, Stella," I said, trying to sound casual, "how have you been? I feel like I haven't seen you in ages." Stella smiled weakly, her eyes sparkling with tears. "I've been okay, Max, just worried about Mom." I nodded sympathetically. As I continued to chat with Stella, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. I was using this woman's illness to further my own agenda, and it didn't sit well with me. Just then, Stella's mom stirred on the couch, her eyes fluttering open. "Max," she whispered, her voice weak. "Come here." I walked over to her, feeling a pang of guilt. "Hey, Luna," I said, trying to sound sincere. "How are you feeling?" She smiled weakly, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. "I'm doing great, Max, and I'm glad you're here. Layla misses you quite a lot." She winked afterwards, and I smiled genuinely this time. I nodded sympathetically, feeling like a traitor. I was pretending to care for this woman, pretending to care for Stella, when my heart belonged to Bella. As I stood there, I realized that Bella was nowhere to be found. I scanned the room, but she was gone. A pang of anxiety hit me. Where was she? Why had she left? I tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. I needed to keep up the charade, to make Stella believe I still cared for her. But my mind kept wandering back to Bella. Where was she? Was she okay? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I would find Bella, and I would make things right between us. But for now, I had to keep up the act. I turned back to Stella, forcing a smile onto my face. "Hey, want to grab a drink or ice cream or something?" I needed to be as close to Layla as I could be. She wasn't the rightful heiress, and while I wait to get back with the rightful heiress, Layla would be very useful to me.